Welcome to yet another episode of Applied Salesforce. Here I shall walk you through a micro project involving one of the widely used wire adapters, helping you to surface related items inside parent record page. Additionally, we shall see component composition and some ways to use map array method to flatten the return JSON results before feeding it to data table based lightning component. Without much ado, let's dive in. Let me sift through the micro project. Kali, VP of Sales at Quotient.com, a career builder, transformer, and an amplifier company, entrusted you, an enterprising LWC developer, to build the requirements outlined below. It states, write a reusable component which helps to surface related items inside parent record page. So related items, child records. The component can be called from any container component with appropriate properties to display just the name of the related records. So the reusability comes into the picture, and the component should offer itself to be called from a container or parent component with appropriate properties. So the reusability is the key here, and we should also be identifying what properties should be passed from the parent component. So this is warranted as it offers an intuitive view of all related entities right inside the parent's record page. Of course, because you will be able to embed the component inside of the parent record page side by side, right? So you have the parent record at the top and your related components next to each other lined at the bottom. The related entities here refers but not limited to contacts and opportunities of account. So we have these three entities. So count the parent and opportunities and contacts, the child entities related to the parent account. So let's look at the solution. As the requirement is to have a reusable component and to be invoked from a container component or a parent component, there is a need to consider component composition. So we need to nest the components. Second is the component ought to be reusable, hence the required properties should be passed from the container parent component. Because for instance, if I want to display um, the opportunity records, then the properties pertaining to that display should be passed into the nested component, the child component. So in case if I have to display the related contacts, so appropriate properties should be passed into the child component. So consider using getRelatedListRecords wire adapter, which can return records of related entities when invoked with appropriate properties. So this is the key. So this does the heavy lifting, the wire adapter. So use data table to display related records intuitively. And this is cool because data table is designed to surface the list of records in a tabular form. And before you could feed the data into the data property of your data table base component, it has to be in the format that is acceptable. So we need to first study the format of the results returned by this wire adapter. If it doesn't conform, then it needs to be flattened before you could feed that into the data attribute of the data table base component. So certainly it requires some amount of flattening, okay, so that we could achieve with the help of the map array method. Okay, so let's look at the output. This is what that is desired. So you have the parent account and related entities, opportunities and contact, and it displays next to each other. And the field that we are interested is only the name field from each of these entities. Okay, so let's dive into the code. So I have two components, the main related list template. So this is the parent or the container component. And next comes the related list utility. So this is the nested component, the child component. So let's dive into the JavaScript controller of the child component. The key thing here, okay, so we have the wire and API decorators imported, and the get related list records wire adapter imported from UI related list API module, and the record ID related list and object API name. These are public properties, and we expect these to be passed from the parent component. The record ID of the account in context. The related list is typically the child relationship name. For opportunities, we pass opportunities. For contacts, we pass contacts because these are the child relationship name. And the object API name, of course, the child entity, the API name of the child entity. The field name and field ID. The field ID is not used here, but when I experimented, I used these two fields to be pulled for these entities. So for now, we use just the name field from each of these entities. So errors and records, all of these are defined as properties. Then the connected callback lifecycle hook is used to initialize the name and ID field. Again, I reiterate, we currently use name field because that's a requirement. In case if you wanted to also have the ID field, this is how it should be done. It should be initialized. So this dot object API name dot name. So we initialize the field underscore name property with the name, okay, with the name field. And then comes the adapter. So we use at wire on get related list records, okay. And the wire adapter expects these three parameters. One is the parent record ID, which is the row ID of account record. Next is the related list ID, which is the child relationship name, and the fields that it needs to pull. So in this case, the get field list is a getter method, get field list, which essentially, returns the field name property. Okay, so this is this does the bulk of the heavy lifting is done by the wire adapter, and we are wiring a function, and here you could see the we are destructuring the returned result into two properties, error property and data property. And if the wire adapter runs successfully, so your data property would be populated. So the format of the data property is different from what the lightning data table data attribute expects. So I have captured the format of the data property. So you could see this is what the returned results is. I mean, it looks, this is the structure. So the data that you see here, right? The data that you see here is of the structure, okay? And we are interested in, we need to navigate into the records and then into the fields and then the name and the value. So there is, there are, it's kind of a nested objects per se. So this cannot be directly fed into the data attribute of lightning data table. So we need to do a sort of flattening this record, and in order to arrive at this level, right? So value, I need to extract this value. So what I've done is I've just moved one level deeper. So data.records is what you see here, okay? This one, data.records. Okay, so this is exactly the code that you see here. So from the data, I moved into data.records, which is this format that you see, and used a map because this is certainly an array, right? So the map can work on this array, and the unflattened record that serves as the, you know, parameter. So that takes, during the first iteration, it takes this particular, you know, element. So this is the first array element, okay, and it is an object. Okay, it is an object, and then you move into fields dot name dot value in order to extract the name of the opportunity in this case. So that's exactly what you're doing, and this is the only piece of code. You could see return of name. So this is serves as a property. So you're returning object, right? So you're returning an object. This is a flattened object. So name, and then unflattened record. You could see this one. We're talking about this particular item. Dot fields dot name dot value, dot fields dot name and dot value. Okay, so for each iteration you're able to create an, you know, flattened record in the form of an object with name as the property. So name property and its value, and this is an object which gets returned. And once the map is complete, right, the execution of the map is complete, this dot records, right, this dot records, the property records will have the objects in this format. So you have couple of objects here for the opportunity entity with name and value. You could say name and the corresponding opportunity name as its value. So this is returned into the records, and this is exactly the array that your lightning data tables data attribute expects. So that's the key thing. And I've also, while testing, I've used multiple console logs, and this one is pretty typical because, um, you know, in order to have a clear visibility to, you know, what is returned, right? So I'll also show you how you can inspect. Okay, you could see this, you know, this, you're able to see the entire structure of the field, right? So that is because I've used JSON.stringify the value that you wanted to display as in the JSON pattern, and the replacer function I've not used any, and the spacer. The spacer allows you to add the indentation for better readability. So that is exactly what I've used here to print these items, you know, the fields. Okay, and that is the code here. And next to it is get columns. Okay, so if you look at the HTML here, I've used the lightning data table to display these items. Let me close this. Okay, lightning data table to display these, you know, that's these table for opportunities table and contacts table. And what I'm doing is to feed the records. We had seen how we are able to flatten the data, the records, and the next item is columns. So, you know, dynamically we are able to dynamically transform each key into an object with label, field name, and type, because this is the format that the column expects, right? The column attribute of lightning data table expects. It requires a label, it requires a field name, although type is optional. So these two are mandatory. Okay, and this is dynamically done. And if you look at what we currently have is this dot records of 0, which is nothing but, you know, this particular item. Let's say if it's an opportunity entity, then this particular item. So this dot records of 0 dot map of field. So what it does is, you know, we are also extracting the keys, object dot keys. So it typically means name. So name is what gets pushed into this field. So label is name, the field name is name, and text type is text. Okay, and this is the only thing that we have because we don't have any other keys per object. Right? The first object, if you take 0, is nothing but the first line. Okay, so here the key is just the name. Okay, so that gets printed. So I was able to, you know, verify it with this console log. It just prints name, right? So the name is the only thing that gets passed into the map method. And this is how you dynamically create the object that is required to be fed into the columns attribute of lightning data table. Okay, so these two are the core, and you can also use the JSON formatter um, to visualize the structure of JSON. This helps you to write your code in case if it requires any flattening. Okay, so this JSON formatter, it is really handy. Okay, and the parent component is pretty simple. The JavaScript control of the parent component just has the decorator, public property, decorator at API, and it creates a public property. So record ID gets automatically populated with the row ID of the parent account record in context. And the markup, so we have a grid. We used a grid for neat layout. We are able to produce the related entities next to each other. So that's because of the grid layout. And the sizing is also provided, one of two. So of two pieces, one piece the opportunity occupies, and the second piece the contacts occupy. And this is how I nest the child component. So you use the kebab casing. You could see related list utility. So this gets transformed into the kebab case. So related list utility, this is the kebab casing, and these are the public properties that's exposed inside of your child component. You could say record ID, related list, and object API name. Record ID, related list, and object API name. Okay, and the object API name is, of course, the API name of the entity, and the related list is the child relationship name that you're passing. And this is quite intuitive because as per the requirement, we are able to make this as highly reusable, and we are able to call it from a parent component passing appropriate properties. And the output is what you see here. Okay, so this uh, accomplishes the requirement, and uh, we are able to surface the related opportunities and contacts inside of accounts. So this is what is expected, and we have perfectly accomplished the requirement. So that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye bye.